Okay, so we are going to solve quadratics using completing the square today. So let's look at how we do that. What we want, this is what we want. We want something like this, plus or minus, it doesn't matter. Something squared equals some number. That way we can extract our squares, do the square root on both sides, just like we did on that last lesson. So what we have to do is we first have to move the constant to the other side and leave a spot. So that'll be a positive 6. Now I've got to figure out what am I going to add to both sides to make it so that I can do this. Okay, so the way that we do that is we take our value, our b, this is the b value because it's a x squared plus bx plus c. We move the c to the other side. We want to take that b value for our new c value, and we want to divide it by 2 and then square it. And that's going to get the value that goes right here. So in this case, it's going to be 2 divided by 2, which is 1, and then 1 squared is 1. So that means I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So then the right side equals 7. And then the left side is going to be x, of course, because I have a coefficient of 1 for x squared. And what actually goes here is whatever the divided by 2 was. So 2 divided by 2, right here, it's 1, so it's going to be plus 1. Because if I do FOIL with x plus 1 times x plus 1, I'm going to get this x squared plus 2x plus 1. So now I have it in the correct form. Now I'm going to take the square root on both sides. And so I'm going to have x plus 1 equals plus minus square root of 7. And then I want to solve it because I want to find all the x values, all the solutions. So I get x equals negative 1 plus or minus square root of 7. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Do the same thing. I'm going to change this to x squared minus 4x. I'm going to leave a spot. I'm going to move this to the other side so it equals 1. So I'm going to do the same thing. B divided by 2 and then square it. Negative 4 divided by 2 and then square it. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2 squared. Negative 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Okay, so the right side equals 5. And then the left side is going to be like this. Coefficient of 1, so it's x. And then the value that is part of this binomial is this guy right here before we square it. It's just b divided by 2. And so that's minus 2. Okay, so we have it in the right form. Now we're going to solve it. So I get x minus 2 equals square root of 5. Solve it. Plus 2 plus 2. I get x equals 2. Oh yeah, this should have been plus or minus. 2 plus or minus square root of 5. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right, so this is going to be x squared minus 4x. And then I need to move that 8 to the other side. So it's going to be negative 8. So what I want to do is I want to take that b divided by 2. So negative 4 divided by 2 squared. That would be a negative 2 squared, which equals 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So then this is going to be x squared. You take whatever it was, b divided by 2, so that's, oh, not x squared. It's going to be x minus 2, and then all that squared equals -4. Then we take the square root on both sides. We get x minus 2 equals, well, square root of -4 is going to be plus minus 2i. Then we want to add 2 to both sides. So x equals, that's a 2. 2 plus or minus 2i. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Solve by completing the square when a does not equal 1. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to see if we can simplify anything. So really what I'm going to do is I am going to divide everything by the coefficient right here of 2. So now that gives me x squared minus 2x plus 1/2 equals 0. Okay, then I go to my next step, x squared minus 2x, move that half over to the other side, so it's -1/2. Yeah, we don't like dealing with fractions, but this is going to be okay. It's going to just work out. Okay, so we take our b and we divide by 2, so -2 divided by 2 is -1, squared is 1. So we're going to add 1 to both sides. So see how I told you it's going to be okay. So this comes out to x. We again get our value from here. So -2 over 2 is -1 squared equals -1/2 plus 1 is going to be a positive 1/2. Okay. So then we take the square root on both sides. So we have x minus 1 equals plus minus square root of 1/2, which I don't like that. So I'm going to rewrite it like this. Okay, so I do need to move this to the other side. So I'm going to write it over here. X equals 1 plus or minus square root of 1 over square root of 2. Okay, so remember we can't leave it with a radical in the denominator. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply this fraction by 1, which is the square root of 2 on top and bottom. So it's 1 plus or minus square root of 2 over 2. Okay, so that took a little bit longer. We dealt with fractions. We dealt with the denominator being a radical, but it still turned out okay. All right, let's go to the quadratic formula. All right, whenever I learned this, I learned it as a song. Pop goes the weasel. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Hopefully you're laughing at me. I mean, with me. Okay, so you need to look at A, B, and C. So you want it like that, and then you want to identify A, B, and C, plug it into the formula, and go. So let's start with our first one. So first thing I'm going to do is move that 8 over. And the reason we are doing this is just giving us all the different options for solving. So we had factoring, we've had completing the square, now we had extracting the square root, and now we have the formula. So what I like to do is go ahead and write A is 1, B is 3, C is 8. And then I do X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x equals -3 plus or minus. All right, so we can do this 9, right? Minus 32, which is -23 over 2. And so I got the negative 23 by doing 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8. All right, so the only thing I can do with this is take out that negative inside the radical and change that to I square root of 23 over 2. So we still have two answers because we have one that is negative 3 plus I squared root of 23 over 2, and negative 3 minus I square root of 23 over 2. Okay, let's go to the next one. Right away, what do you see on this? I see that I can divide everything by 5 or factor a 5 out. 5, 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. And we don't need the 5 there anymore. So let's go ahead and identify A is 4, B is negative 4, and C is 1. So x equals negative b, so it'd be a positive 4 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay, so we need to simplify. So this is 4 plus or minus. All right, we have negative 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times 1 is 16. So we have 16 minus 16, which is actually 0. Square root of 0 is 0. I'm going to go ahead and write it though. Over 8. So this actually works out pretty well because square root of 0 is 0. So it's really 4 over 8, which is 1/2. Because there's nothing I can do. I didn't have to do a plus minus because it'd be like 4 plus 0 is 4. 4 minus 0 is 4. So our answer is just half. All right, we have another one. All right, I'm going to move things over. So I want this to be positive, so I'm going to move it to the other side. Plus the 4x. I need to move this over to the other side, so it's minus 8 equals 0. I have a coefficient of 1. Everything's good. So let's go ahead and label A, B, and C. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so negative 4 plus or minus, let's see, 4 squared is 16. 4 times 8 is 32. So we have, let's see, oh, that's a negative 8. Sorry, almost forgot that. So that would be square root of 16 plus 32 over 2, which let's simplify a little bit more, plus or minus square root of 48 over 2. All right, so square root of 48, we've got to simplify. I think we've done this one before, but let's see. So square root of 48 is going to be found by doing, you can do your factor tree or you can do your perfect square way, but this is 16 times 3, which is 4 squared roots of 3. So let's get back to the problem. Negative 4 plus or minus 4 square root of 3 over 2. And then we are going to simplify everything by 2. So that it's negative 4 by 2, 2 by 2, and then 4 by 2. So what we're doing is basically we're factoring out that 2 by dividing. So this would be negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 3. Because basically I do like this and divide by 2. I do like this, divide by 2. And that's how I get there. Okay, let's go to our last problem on our notes. All right, there's nothing I can factor out here. So we are dealing with some bigger numbers. So A equals 4, B equals 16, C equals 17. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. All right, so we have negative 16 plus minus square root of, all right, 16 squared is 256, and then negative 4 times 17 is negative 272, all over 2a, all over 8. So we get negative 16 plus or minus square root of 256 minus 272 is negative 16, which, let's simplify that radical. That would be a 4i. And then what we can do is simplify. So I'm going to simplify. I can do a couple different ways. I could do this, simplify that. So I'd be like negative 2 plus or minus half I. Or what we could do is simplify by 4 instead, because they're all divisible by 4. So then that'd be negative 4 plus or minus 1i over 2. But these are equivalent. All right, that is it for today's note.